The billion-dollar baby, a divorce that changed everything. Subscribe for more unexpected twists, like this video, if you believe in true love finding a way. And comment your thoughts on Eleanor's ultimate move. The velvet carpet in the high-end London law firm seemed to absorb the light, and the exaggeratedly cold air conditioning only amplified the sense of anxiety hanging in the air. This was no ordinary divorce. It was the public end of a marriage between two global business dynasties, and the tension was almost palpable, heavy as the dark marble lining the walls. On one side of the massive mahogany table sat Arthur Sterling, the billionaire heir to the Sterling Global Logistics Group. He was relaxed, overly confident, almost mocking. His blue eyes, usually alert and cold as ice, were fixed on the door. Next to him, occupying the chair that should have been Arthur's, was Luna. Young, platinum blonde, wearing a red silk dress that was, to all intents and purposes, a provocative and calculated gesture by Arthur. He had brought her as a trophy, a clear demonstration that he had moved on, and that his marriage to his ex-wife, Eleanor, was now just a forgotten footnote. Arthur had meticulously orchestrated the scene. He wanted Eleanor to feel the weight of his rejection, to understand that while he was thriving and passionately in love, she was being discarded. He had filed for divorce almost a year ago, claiming his love for Luna was overwhelming, and he could no longer live a sham. What Arthur didn't know was that his filing had hit Eleanor at the exact moment she was about to reveal the news that would change both their lives. She was pregnant. The door opened. Arthur straightened in his chair, a rehearsed smirk of superiority and nonchalance on his lips, ready to dispense the indifference he had planned. But the smirk froze. Eleanor walked into the room, and the effect on his confidence was immediate and devastating. She was not disheveled or desperate. She wore a simple but impeccable dress in a shade of forest green, which highlighted the natural elegance of her posture. Her dark brown hair was loose, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She exuded a mature serenity Arthur had never seen in her, almost an aura of peace that brutally contrasted with the emotional chaos he expected to inflict. But it wasn't Eleanor's composure that paralyzed him. It was what she carried. Nestled in her arms, wrapped in a soft white wool shawl, was a small bundle. A bundle that was breathing, moving slightly. A bundle that he immediately recognized with a terror that sent a chilling shiver down his spine. Like a newborn baby, Arthur's eyes widened. His lawyers, who had been flipping through folders, stopped. Luna, beside him, lost her superior poise, and her jaw almost dropped. The silence in the room became a deafening vacuum. Eleanor walked calmly, sat in the chair opposite Arthur, next to her own lawyers, and carefully adjusted the baby. "Sorry for the delay." Eleanor's voice was low, professional, without a trace of emotion. She looked directly at Arthur. Her honey-colored eyes were like impenetrable shields. "I had to ensure Diana had been fed. She's only a month old, and since the divorce took so long to finalize, it was inevitable that she would be here today." Diana. The name resonated in Arthur's mind like an alarm bell. 1 month. Everything clicked into place in one brutal second. The divorce filing was 10 months ago. A 1-month-old baby meant she conceived before, or at most, right after he filed the petition. They were still married at the time of conception. The shock was so intense that Arthur had to grip the table. He had spent the last year rejoicing in his freedom, parading Luna, and believing Eleanor was at home lamenting. He had discarded her without a second thought, declaring his love for another. And now, here was living proof that he had lost more than just a marriage. He had lost the chance to witness a pregnancy and the birth of a child. Rage bubbled up in Luna, who couldn't contain the whispered comment, loud enough to be heard. "Who is the father of that child, Eleanor?" Eleanor slowly turned her head toward her ex-husband's mistress. It was the first time she showed anything other than indifference, a look of such cold cuttingness that made Luna shrink back. "Diana's paternity is not under discussion in this divorce, Luna," Eleanor replied, her voice maintaining composure, but with a sharp edge. "She is my daughter, and if your concern is Arthur's assets, you can be sure I have my own, inherited from my family, and I am not after his honey. The only thing that interests me is closing this chapter as quickly as possible and securing my daughter's future." The use of the term "my daughter" and the emphasis on the fact that she didn't need his money hit Arthur where it hurt most: his pride. The financial indifference was a punch. The fact that she had had a child and not told him was an even greater blow. Arthur finally managed to speak, his voice hoarse. "Eleanor, we need to talk privately. What is this? Why didn't you tell me?" Eleanor sighed, a gesture of genuine tiredness. "Arthur, there is nothing to talk about. When you filed for divorce, saying you loved another, and that our life together was a mistake, any meaningful communication between us ended. I was about to tell you about the pregnancy, but your declaration of love for your new companion made it clear that you would have no interest in a child with me. And I did not want my child to be born into an environment where the father would consider her a burden or an obligation." She looked at Diana's small, sleeping face, a deep, protective love illuminating her eyes. That was the only moment she relaxed, the only chink in the armor she had built. Eleanor's lawyer intervened with a firm voice. "Gentlemen, I ask that we return to the matter of asset division and agreements. My client wishes to resolve this quickly and quietly. The prenuptial assets are clearly defined, and Mrs. Eleanor is waiving any claim on the Sterling Group shares. We only want the immediate release of the divorce decree." Arthur was too stunned to focus on financial details. He kept looking at the baby, trying to find any resemblance to himself, or worse, to some other man Eleanor might have met in the interim. But Diana was too small, just a month old. A tiny bundle of innocence that had dismantled his entire plan of superiority. "Eleanor, we need a DNA test," Arthur demanded. The voice full of authority usually used in boardroom meetings now sounded desperate. The smile that appeared on Eleanor's face was a mix of scorn and deep sadness. "You lost that right, Arthur," she responded calmly. "You abdicated your responsibility and your interest when you chose another woman and told me you no longer loved me. Diana does not need a father who claims her only out of wounded pride or to avoid public embarrassment. She has me, and that is enough." The meeting proceeded, but for Arthur, it was just background noise. His mind was in a turmoil. He watched Eleanor, the way she held the baby, the maternal instinct he had never seen, as they had postponed motherhood to focus on their careers. That small being had transformed Eleanor into a woman he barely recognized. Strong, independent, and what was most humiliating, completely uninterested in him. The mistress, Luna, had become irrelevant in the room, a forgotten footnote, just as Arthur had tried to make Eleanor. The stage now belonged to the mother and daughter. At the end of the long and tense meeting, as the lawyers reviewed the final papers, Eleanor stood up. She did not look at Arthur. She just adjusted Diana and headed for the door. Arthur couldn't take it. He stood up, stumbling slightly, and approached her. "Eleanor, I didn't know. Let me see my daughter." Eleanor stopped and looked at him, the judgment in her eyes more painful than any accusation. "She is not yours. You never wanted children with me. You wanted Luna. She is Diana, my daughter." She left the office without looking back, leaving Arthur standing in the middle of the room, the brutal realization of his loss crushing him. He had traded a family for a fleeting affair, and for the first time in his pampered life, he tasted the bitter flavor of true regret. The gentleman on the sidewalk, Meanwhile, outside the grand building, the scene was being observed by a very different pair of eyes. In a corner cafe across the street was Victor Sterling, a technology entrepreneur, also of considerable wealth, but with a more discreet and practical approach to life. He was there for a business meeting with a client who had just canceled. Victor was taking the moment to read a report and drink a coffee when he saw the commotion outside the office of Arthur Sterling, an acquaintance of his in the business circuit, with whom he maintained a cold and distant professional relationship. He saw an elegant woman hurriedly leave with a baby in her arms. Something about her posture caught his attention. There was dignity in her stride, but also a silent vulnerability. She paused for an instant, the cold autumn wind blowing, and she pulled the shawl tighter to protect the baby. Victor, with his thoughtful nature and instinct for chivalry, noticed she seemed about to call a taxi, which, with a newborn, seemed incredibly inconvenient. He saw her face when she turned to the street and was instantly impressed, not just by the classic beauty, but by the expression in her eyes, which he interpreted as a mixture of relief at having escaped and a deep sadness that surrounded her like a mist. Eleanor finally managed to flag down a taxi, which stopped abruptly. As she awkwardly tried to open the back door with the baby in her arms, the strap of her handbag slipped and fell to the ground, spilling the contents, wallet, keys, lipstick, onto the pavement. Victor dropped the report. Chivalry overcame discretion. He couldn't bear to watch her struggle. He crossed the busy street, moved by an impulse that was completely atypical in his organized life. "Please let me help," he said, his voice deep and calm. He quickly knelt on the ground, gathering the scattered items before he could even think of a proper excuse for interfering. Eleanor looked up, surprised by the sudden interruption. Her eyes met his, green, deep, and full of a genuine kindness that was rare in her world. Victor was not looking at her with covetousness or judgment, only with practical concern. "Oh, thank you so much," she said, a little breathless. "I'm so clumsy with Diana." Victor gathered everything, handed the bag to her, and held it while she put it on her shoulder. He then fully opened the taxi door and gave a slight bow. "It's a pleasure. Mothers with newborns are actually heroines." He smiled, an open and welcoming smile that relaxed the tension in Eleanor for the first time that day. "Just tired," she admitted, a small smile appearing on her lips. She got into the taxi, adjusted Diana, and just as the door was about to close, she felt she needed to know who this gentle man was. "I'm Eleanor," she said, extending her hand out of the taxi. Victor shook it firmly and warmly, his fingers large and strong. "Victor, it's a pleasure, Eleanor. I hope the rest of your day is much quieter." The taxi pulled away, leaving Victor alone on the sidewalk. He didn't return to the cafe immediately. He stood there watching the car drive off, feeling a strange sense that this swag encounter, this act of kindness, had been more significant than it seemed. He knew Eleanor had just emerged from an emotionally exhausting event. The law office was proof. He saw the relief in her exit and the vulnerability she was trying to hide. He picked up his phone and sent a quick text message to his assistant. "Discreetly find the whereabouts of Eleanor Sterling, Arthur Sterling's ex-wife, for research purposes only." Victor wasn't a stalker, but he was a man of action and keen observation. Something about Eleanor's dignity, the way she protected the baby, and the sadness he had perceived in her eyes, made him feel she deserved more than whatever she was facing. That glimpse of the mother and baby had touched a chord in his heart he didn't even know existed. He felt he needed to ensure she was okay. Even if it was from a distance, he knew he was treading on dangerous territory. But the image of Eleanor's tired face and the small sleeping baby would not leave his mind. He returned to his table, but his concentration was gone. The business report was secondary. He caught himself imagining her life. the journey she was about to begin as a single mother, and the strength it would take to face the business world and high society after such a public divorce. He felt drawn to a woman he had only seen for 5 minutes, but who seemed to carry the weight of a world on her shoulders. The sapphire of salvation. The silence of Eleanor's apartment was a luxury she had earned with years of hard work, but which was now flooded by the soft melody of her baby. She was in the living room, rocking Diana, who had finally fallen into a deep sleep after a long, comforting feeding. The apartment, far from the cold opulence of Arthur's mansion, was her refuge, decorated with warm colors and filled with books and art, a reflection of her true self, which she had suppressed during years of marriage to a man who valued ostentation above soul. The divorce was finalized. The signature on the paper was one less burden, but the emotional exhaustion still hit her in waves. The scene with Arthur and Luna, though painful in its predictability, had served as a final confirmation. She had made the right choice by moving forward alone. Arthur was not the man she had loved, and he certainly wouldn't be the father Diana deserved. However, his demand for a DNA test worried her. She knew with absolute certainty that Diana was Arthur's daughter. Conception occurred on the single. Last night they tried to fix the marriage, before he publicly rejected her for Luna. She had planned to tell him, but the cruelty of his divorce filing made her retreat. Protecting Diana from paternal rejection became her top priority. She gently placed Diana in the crib and went to the kitchen to prepare an herbal tea. It was then that her phone rang. It was a message from her lawyer. "Eleanor, Arthur is formally requesting a paternity test. He is threatening to go public if you do not cooperate. He claims you are hiding the fact to deprive him of his parental rights." Eleanor felt bile rise in her throat. Arthur was using the media, his favorite weapon, to manipulate her. He wasn't interested in Diana. He was interested in power and saving the public image of a family man that he had tarnished. And of course, he couldn't stand the idea that she might have moved on with another man so quickly. She typed the response to the lawyer with trembling hands. "Tell him I will do the test, but under my conditions. I want everything formalized. He must publicly acknowledge the baby if the result is positive, and I demand full custody. Visits will be supervised until Diana is older and he proves to be a suitable father. Otherwise, he will have to prove paternity in court, and that will be long and painful for him." As she awaited the response, a pleasant memory interrupted the tension. Victor's face, the kind man on the sidewalk, the way he knelt without hesitation to pick up her belongings, the firm, comforting touch of his hands. He was the antithesis of Arthur, discreet, thoughtful, and with an aura of calm. The brief encounter had been an unexpected balm on a horrible day. Across the city, Victor couldn't concentrate. His 30th floor office, with a panoramic view of the metropolis, was usually his center of productivity. But today, the image of Eleanor and Diana obscured all the charts and reports. His assistant had sent him the summary he requested. Eleanor Thorne, former marketing executive, daughter of a traditional banking family, married to Arthur Sterling. The divorce, though finalized, was the hottest gossip in the circuit. Victor discovered that Eleanor was a woman of remarkable intelligence and impeccable reputation, who had stepped away from the spotlight to dedicate herself to her marriage, only to be publicly betrayed. Victor felt a wave of protective indignation. It was a new and powerful feeling. He finally decided to act. He wouldn't invite her to a formal dinner. Eleanor didn't need another empty social engagement. She needed peace, and perhaps a genuine conversation. He picked up the business card of her lawyer, who coincidentally was the same as his, and called, requesting her personal contact, claiming a business matter that might be of interest to her. Hours later, Eleanor received a discreet message on her cell phone from an unknown number. "Victor Sterling, I hope you don't consider this an intrusion. I know you've just been through a rough day, and you're probably not looking for company. But if you need a friendly shoulder that isn't a lawyer, or just a coffee in a quiet place where no one will ask questions, please feel free to call me. No pressure. I just thought it might be good to have a friendly face around. Eleanor read the message several times. It wasn't an invitation to a date. It was an invitation to comfort. There was no rush or obvious flirting, just an offer of refuge. She smiled. It was exactly what she needed. She replied with a simple, "I would like a coffee, but my company comes with a bonus that requires silence. Do you mind Diana's presence?" The response was immediate. "I adore babies. I know a cafe with a library that has large sofas and is famous for being quiet." Tomorrow at 10. The meeting the next day was strangely natural. The literary cafe was tranquil, and they sat in a secluded corner with a comfortable sofa, where Diana could sleep in her stroller. Victor didn't touch on the subject of the divorce, Arthur, or paternity. He talked about his work, creating clean technology startups, about books, travel, and his own family life, mentioning the loss of his mother when he was young, which had made him an introspective man who valued real connections. Eleanor, in turn, felt at ease to be herself. She talked about her ambitions before Arthur, about the pleasure of holding Diana, and about the simple joy of being a mother. She discovered that Victor had a subtle and perceptive sense of humor, and that his green eyes didn't just observe her, they truly saw her. "You have incredible strength, Eleanor," Victor said at one point, sipping his coffee. "Walking away from such a large marriage with a newborn and maintaining your dignity, that's rare." Eleanor sighed. "It's not strength, Victor. It's survival instinct. After Arthur filed for divorce and said he loved the other woman, I felt annihilated. But when I found out I was pregnant, I realized I wasn't fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for her. And for her, I am invincible." Victor leaned forward. "The father, does he know?" Eleanor hesitated. "He knows now, and he's making things difficult, demanding a DNA test." "And will you do it?" "Yes," she said. "Because I have nothing to hide. Diana is his, but he lost the right to be the father she needs, and I will fight to ensure he is only a name on a document, not a toxic presence in her life." Eleanor's emotion was palpable, but her resolve was unwavering. Victor reached for her hand that was on the table, a gesture of silent, non-romantic comfort. "Whatever the result, Eleanor, remember, Diana has you, and you are her world. A father who needs to be forced to recognize his own daughter is not worthy of you." His touch was warm, firm, and honest. There was none of Arthur's superficial sensuality, but rather a promise of security. Eleanor felt herself blush and withdrew her hand gently, but with gratitude. They spent the afternoon talking, and by the end, Victor offered to drive them home. In the car, a luxurious black sedan. But without the showy airs of Arthur's cars, Victor drove calmly. He stopped in front of her apartment. "I'd like to see you again, Eleanor," he said, turning to look at her. "Not as a distraction, but as a friend who wants to help. You're in a transition phase, and I know how lonely that is." "I would like that too, Victor," she admitted, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Thank you for today. You gave me a little piece of peace." The new legacy, while Eleanor and Victor's relationship blossomed into a deep friendship that subtly moved towards something more, Arthur's obsession grew. The fact that Eleanor was at peace, and worse, dating another man, he had her followed, enraged him. Arthur had reluctantly agreed to Eleanor's conditions for the DT test, and the procedure was conducted discreetly at a private clinic. He could hardly wait to prove the child was his, not out of paternal love, but to turn the tables and prove Eleanor was a manipulator trying to deprive him. He believed that once paternity was proven, he could ruin Eleanor's new romance and, who knows, even win her back, feeling entitled to the family he had thrown away. A week later, Arthur's lawyer called. The voice was strangely tense. "Arthur, the result is out. The test is positive. Diana is your daughter." Relief and satisfaction filled Arthur. He laughed, a dry, triumphant sound. "I knew it. Tell Eleanor I want to see her immediately, and tell her that now I have rights. I want full access to my daughter." The lawyer coughed. "Arthur, there's a complication. Remember, the agreement you signed guarantees Eleanor full custody. You agreed to supervised visits, and that will only be overturned if Eleanor allows it, or if you prove in court that she is unfit. Furthermore, she has one final demand." "Which?" Arthur asked, his voice growing impatient. "She wants you to make a public statement. She wants you to admit Diana's paternity, and that you apologize for leaving her alone during the pregnancy. She wants the media to know you are the father, but also that you were the absent husband. It is a condition for her to even consider a supervised visit." Arthur was livid. Eleanor was publicly humiliating him. He, the powerful Arthur Sterling, apologizing to his ex-wife. But he wanted the child. He wanted Diana. He wanted control. And he knew that if he tried to fight in court, Eleanor would destroy him with the story of the betrayal and abandonment. "Tell her I will," Arthur grunted, swallowing his bitter pride. "But tell her this won't be the last word. I will have that child." While Arthur planned his revenge and the rescue of his image, Eleanor and Victor were in a park, under a tree, watching Diana sleep. Victor was reading Eleanor a passage from a poetry book, his voice low and melodious. "You're tense, Eleanor," Victor observed. Closing the book, Eleanor smiled, but it was a forced smile. Arthur accepted the test and agreed to my conditions. He will make a public statement. That's good. It's good and terrifying. I forced him to be public about the paternity so he wouldn't use it against me. But I know he won't give up. He sees Diana as a trophy, a way to hurt me, not as a daughter. Victor took her hand again, this time without hesitation. He didn't let go. "Eleanor, I told you that you are invincible because of her, and I am here, by your side. Let Arthur have his spotlight. You have reality. You have Diana. And I want to be part of that reality, if you will allow me." He looked at her deeply. The friendship had reached its peak. The time for caution was over. "I don't just want to be your friend, Eleanor. I am a practical man. I know you have a child and an obsessive ex-husband. But I also know that I have never felt for anyone what I feel for you. That dignity, that strength, and your heart. I love the way you protect Diana. I love the fact that you prioritize her. I want to support you, and I want to love you and Diana as if she were mine, even if her biological father is an imbecile." Eleanor felt tears well up in her eyes. They weren't tears of sadness, but of acceptance of a happiness she didn't know she deserved. "Victor, You don't have to answer me now," he interrupted gently. "Just know, I love you, Eleanor, and I will prove that I am the man you and your daughter deserve." Arthur Sterling's statement in the press was a carefully orchestrated media event, but disastrous in its essence. With airs of false contrition, he confirmed Diana's paternity and promised to take responsibility. But the note was clearly aimed at saving his image as a respectable businessman, and not at expressing paternal affection. Nevertheless, the act of publicly recognizing Diana was Eleanor's victory. She had forced his hand, ensuring the world knew he was the father, but that she was the child's sole guardian. With this public chapter closed, Eleanor allowed herself to focus on the only thing that truly mattered: her happiness and Diana's. And that happiness had the name and face of Victor Sterling. The relationship between them quickly flourished, based on mutual respect and an emotional intimacy that Eleanor had never known was possible. Victor was not just a lover. He was a safe harbor. He adapted to a baby's routine naturally, learning to change diapers, sterilize bottles, and rock Diana with a patience and affection that melted Eleanor's heart. He spent evenings with them, not just as a guest, but as an active participant in the family life they were building. The romance was intense and genuine. The physical connection that followed the emotional bond was explosive. Eleanor, who felt neglected and invisible in her marriage to Arthur, discovered in Victor a man who idolized her. He saw her as a complete woman, mother, professional, and lover. His touches were slow, deliberate, full of tenderness and ardent desire. They explored passion at a pace that respected her fatigue as a mother, transforming stolen moments into precious demonstrations of love and total surrender. On a rainy night, while Diana slept soundly, they were together on the sofa, under a soft blanket. Victor kissed her with a devotion that took her breath away. "You are the most beautiful and strongest woman I have ever met, Eleanor," he whispered, caressing her skin with a reverence that made her feel desired in a pure and deep way. "With you, I don't just want to build a life. I want to build a legacy, a family." Eleanor nestled into his neck, inhaling the familiar scent of sandalwood and warm skin. "I feel the same, Victor. I didn't think this would be possible to find. Aren't you afraid of everything that comes with me? Of Diana? Of Arthur?" Victor lifted her face so she had to look at him. His green eyes were serious and full of conviction. "Diana is not a burden, Eleanor. She is a miracle, and I love her as if she were mine from the moment I saw her in your arms on the street. As for Arthur, he is just a shadow of your past. He may be a billionaire, but what does he have that I don't? Your love? Your trust? I give you peace, Eleanor. I give you a future. He can only offer you chaos and regret." In that moment, they sealed their destiny. Victor, kneeling beside the sofa, pulled out a velvet box. It wasn't an ostentatious diamond like the ones Arthur had given her, but an elegant, timeless sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds, reflecting her description and depth. "Marry me, Eleanor. Let me take care of you and Diana forever." Eleanor didn't hesitate. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Yes, Victor. Yes. 1,000 times yes." While Eleanor and Victor lived the euphoria of their discreet engagement, Arthur Sterling seethed with rage and jealousy. His sources in the social circuit quickly informed him of Eleanor's serious involvement with Victor Sterling, one of his main competitors in the technology sector, albeit in different niches. The fact that Victor was equally rich, successful, and what most irritated him, genuine, was a personal insult. He had finally scheduled his first supervised visit with Diana, months after the divorce and the DNA test, held at Eleanor's home, under the watchful eye of a social worker. The meeting was a fiasco. Arthur, accustomed to commanding boardrooms, was lost with a baby in his arms. He tried to bribe Diana with expensive toys and tried to talk to her as if she were an adult, ignoring the subtlety of infant interaction. Diana, sensing the tension and unnaturalness, began to cry. Eleanor entered the room, calmed Diana in seconds with her familiar touch, and picked her up. Arthur watched, frustrated. "You are doing this on purpose, Eleanor," he accused, his voice low and venomous. "You are trying to alienate me from my own daughter." You are alienating yourself from Diana, Arthur," Eleanor countered without losing her composure. "She is only a few months old and needs love and routine, not a father who barely knows the name of her favorite toy. You are here out of obligation, not desire, and she feels that." "I am here because I am her father," he growled, his face tense. "And who is this Victor Sterling? Have you already put him in a daddy role with my daughter? You are exposing Diana to a stranger." Eleanor stared at him coldly, the sapphire ring hidden in the palm of her hand. "Diana has been exposed to the only thing she needs, a loving home. And if you want to talk about her life, I suggest you stop sending detectives to follow the man I am engaged to. My engagement to Victor will soon be public, and he will be the man Diana recognizes as her father, in all the ways that matter." Arthur staggered back, the news hitting him like an electric shock. Engagement. He had lost everything. He had lost Eleanor, his life, and now he was about to lose the connection to his daughter, to a rival who loved her unconditionally. "You can't do this, Eleanor. I will fight for that child in court. I am the biological father," Arthur shouted desperately. "You can fight, Arthur," Eleanor said, her voice firm and resolute. "But remember, the court doesn't just care about DNA. It cares about the child's best interest. And Diana's best interest is the man who rocks her when she cries, who worries about her vaccines, and who doesn't treat her like a power play. Victor is that man, and you lost your chance." The social worker intervened, ending the visit prematurely. Arthur left the house trembling with fury, but Eleanor's phrase echoed in his mind. He lost his chance. He had traded true love for instant gratification and was now paying the price. Eleanor closed the door and sighed, returning to Victor's arms, who was waiting for her in the kitchen. She was not afraid of Arthur, not anymore. She had a love that shielded her. The ultimate victory, the news of Eleanor Thorne's engagement to Victor Sterling, the discreet tech magnate, shook social circles more than any divorce scandal. The contrast between Arthur Sterling's public coldness and Victor's evident dedication to Eleanor and Diana was undeniable. The media quickly turned against Arthur, painting him as the negligent ex-husband who had traded happiness for an affair and was now desperately trying to regain what he had thrown away. Arthur, in his arrogance, tried to use his financial power to destabilize Victor, initiating a campaign of subtle attacks in the business press and trying to undermine some of his projects. But Victor was more than a competitor. He was a shrewd strategist and, above all, a man of unwavering principles. He faced Arthur's attacks with dignity and transparency, turning the dispute into another public defeat for Eleanor's ex-husband. Arthur's last card was to file a lawsuit demanding more custody time, arguing that the stable environment of his wealth would be superior for Diana. He sought shared custody, seeing it as the only way to maintain some control over Eleanor's life. The trial was the climax of months of tension. The judge, after hearing the testimonies and analyzing the evidence, did not focus only on finances or DNA. He focused on the child's well-being. Eleanor and Victor testified, describing Diana's routine, how Victor had fully integrated into her life, and the emotional stability he provided. Victor, in an emotional deposition, declared his unconditional love for Diana, expressing the desire to legally adopt her. Arthur's lawyer presented wealth charts and the proof of the DNA test, but Arthur's testimony was his ruin. He spoke about his rights, about the shame of being excluded, and about how he could offer Diana a more luxurious future. He failed to mention her name, her feeding times, or any intimate detail of her life. He failed to demonstrate love. The judge delivered the verdict with brutal clarity. The court recognizes the biological paternity of Mr. Arthur Sterling. However, the court also recognizes that the biological father has shown a significant lack of interest and involvement in Diana's life, from conception to the present moment. The child's best interest is not the father's fortune, but the mother's stability and affection. Ms. Eleanor Thorne demonstrates having built a loving home, supported by Mr. Victor Sterling, who has proven to be a committed and constant paternal figure. Full custody of Diana was granted to Eleanor, with Victor obtaining authorization to begin the adoption process. Arthur was limited to quarterly supervised visits, at the discretion of the social worker and Eleanor. It was the end. Arthur had lost the battle, and more importantly, he had lost the chance to be a father, replaced by the man Eleanor had chosen. 2 years later, Eleanor and Victor's house was a haven of laughter and love. They had married in an intimate and elegant ceremony, and Victor had finalized Diana's adoption, who was now Diana Sterling Thorne. Arthur's name was only a distant note, a faded echo. Diana, a clever 2-year-old girl, called Victor Daddy, with the sweetness and conviction of a child who recognizes the truth of the heart. Victor, in turn, was the most devoted father imaginable, reading bedtime stories, attending school meetings, and being the pillar of a complete family. Eleanor flourished. Free from Arthur's shadow, she reactivated her career with Victor's unconditional support. And together, they formed a couple that was the epitome of success and true love. They had built an empire of happiness based on values, not vanity. On a sunny afternoon, Eleanor watched Victor play with Diana in the garden. He tossed her in the air, and the laughter of the two people she loved most filled the air. Victor looked at Eleanor, and she saw in his green eyes the same promise of security and devotion as the day he helped her gather her bag on the sidewalk. He was the new love she deserved. He was the father Diana needed. They were a family, and that love, which began amidst a painful divorce and a newborn baby, was proof that destiny sometimes waits for the right moment to bring the right person. It's a final call to action. If this story of love, strength, and choosing the right father resonated with you, please subscribe and like this video. Share your favorite moment of Victor's kindness in the comments below. Subscribe to see how Eleanor and Victor build their empire of happiness. Like this video if you believe in love and unwavering resolve. A power couple, reimagined 2 years after the trial, Eleanor Sterling Thorne. She kept her maiden name, honoring her mother and family, but gracefully hyphenated it with Victor's, was not just a happy mother, but a formidable businesswoman. Encouraged and supported by Victor, she re-entered the business world, but this time not as an aide or arranger, but as a true architect. She founded Thorne Design and Strategy, a high-end consulting firm specializing in brand repositioning and spatial design for emerging technology conglomerates. Her firm quickly became a sought-after partner, especially in the clean technology sector that Victor dominated. Their home in Richmond, London, was symbolic of their new life. Cozy, luxurious, but never ostentatious. Everything revolved around Diana, now a clever, sharp 2-year-old, who called Victor Daddy with absolute conviction and love. "I have a meeting with the Heiress group this afternoon," Eleanor told Victor one Sunday morning, while Victor skillfully helped Diana tie her trainers. Victor didn't look up. He focused on the small knot. "Heiress is a massive contract, but remember to stick to your schedule requirements. I don't want you missing Diana's swimming lesson for the sake of the Old Arthur rules." Old Arthur? Eleanor smiled. The name was now just an amusing, weightless private joke. "I'll be back before 3. Besides, I'm meeting Henry Caldwell there." Henry Caldwell, a renowned venture capitalist, was one of Victor's closest friends and top business partners. He admired Eleanor unconditionally, not just for her intellect, but for the way she handled the divorce. "Perfect. Henry has a daughter the same age as Diana. Tell him we need to arrange a playdate. Diana needs more friends who know how to climb trees," Victor said, finally satisfied with the knot. He picked Diana up and placed a kiss on her cheek. Their life was a perfect balance of ambition and family priority. Victor was neither jealous nor threatened by Eleanor's new success. He saw it as their joint victory, the final echo of regret. Meanwhile, Arthur Sterling was completely broken. After the trial, his image was irredeemable. The champagne showmanship and his absence from his daughter's life had turned him from a powerful tycoon into a pathetic joke among the elite. Major contracts were lost, the group's stock plummeted, and even Luna quickly abandoned him, When she realized the powerful man had become a self-pitying wreck, Arthur lived in loneliness and regret. His quarterly supervised visits with Diana were a torture. Diana, though young, recognized the tension and unfamiliarity from this man. She often cried, only settling down when Eleanor entered the room. During a recent visit, when Diana began sobbing as Arthur tried to hand her an expensive toy, Arthur crumbled. "Why?" Arthur whispered to Eleanor as she gently soothed Diana in her arms. "Why would you do this to me, Eleanor? Why did you take her away?" "I didn't take Diana away from you, Arthur," Eleanor replied, her voice calm, devoid of malice, just stating the facts. "You walked out of her life yourself. I gave you truth, transparency, and a chance, but you only saw ownership in your ego. You chose a red dress over a family. I love her." "You love the idea that she is yours. You love the idea that you can control me through her," Eleanor said, looking directly into his eyes. "But true love doesn't require supervision. True love wakes up at 3 a.m. to warm milk and change nappies, not deliver thousands of pounds worth of toys for 30 minutes every quarter. Victor is Diana's father. You are merely the donor." That defeat broke Arthur. He realized he had lost not only assets, but his soul. Not long after, Arthur sold a large portion of his Sterling Global shares and withdrew from the London spotlight, moving to a secluded island, living a solitary life with regret as his only companion. Audience interaction. If Arthur were to try and contact Eleanor again in 10 years, what do you think she should say to him? Share your answer. The unshakable dynasty. Another 2 years passed. Eleanor, now 53, stood in her office, looking out at the snow-covered Regent's Park. Her phone rang. It was Victor. "Are you done for the day?" she asked. "I am done," Victor replied, his voice full of warmth. "And I have news. The lawyer just confirmed that Arthur has officially waived all remaining visitation rights. He's transferred his trusts for Diana, but has completely closed the door." Eleanor took a deep breath. It was the final confirmation she needed. "It's over then," she whispered, completely. "What do you think we should do to celebrate?" "We have a schedule, my love," Eleanor chuckled. "We have Diana's school concert at 4, and then we have a small family gathering with Henry Caldwell." "And after that?" Victor asked. Eleanor looked down at her desk, where a new business plan lay. The Thorne Sterling Impact Fund, a venture capital fund established by both of them to invest in women-led businesses. "And after that, we build the empire," Eleanor replied, her voice ringing with strength and confidence. "We prove that a family built on respect and love is the strongest fortress of all." "I love you, Eleanor." "I love you too, Victor. Thank you for everything." Victor spoke softly. "I didn't do anything. You are the one who chose to fight for your worth. I am just the lucky man who got to stand by you." Meaningful conclusion. Love is the foundation. Eleanor and Victor's love, which began with a moment of kindness on a sidewalk and was forged in the fire of a bitter divorce trial, became an inspirational tale. It was not a rags-to-riches fairy tale, but a lesson in true value. Eleanor learned that silence is not weakness, it can be strategy. And true love is not about ownership, but about unconditional dedication. She did not seek the richest man, she sought the best man. And that man became the pillar of a family where Diana grew up in stability, security, and boundless affection. They proved that a biological father can be replaced by a father of the heart, and a hateful divorce can be the stepping stone to a life that is far more whole and meaningful. Final call to action. If you find this story a testament to love and resolve prevailing, please like and share. Don't forget to subscribe to follow more stories of powerful women's ascent. The launch of the Impact Fund. 4 years had passed since the dramatic exit from the divorce court. The Thorne Sterling Impact Fund, TSIF, the venture established by Eleanor and Victor, was now dominating the European investment landscape. Their focus on funding sustainable technology and female-led startups had not only generated massive returns, but had also redefined what success meant in the fiercely competitive world of London finance. Eleanor, as the fund's chief strategy officer, was lauded for her unparalleled eye for overlooked potential. Her success was the ultimate resounding answer to Arthur's dismissal of her as a homemaker. One blustery Tuesday, Eleanor stood on stage at the Royal Exchange in the City of London, giving the keynote speech at the annual Women in Tech Summit. Her focus was on the ripple effect of ethical investing. "We were told that heart and balance sheets don't mix," Eleanor declared to a packed, admiring audience. "We were told that prioritizing family over the hustle meant sacrificing ambition. I stand here today to tell you that those beliefs are the real rounding errors in the corporate world. Our greatest strength, as women and as leaders, lies in our ability to build a foundation that is stable, not brittle. We invest in people, not just profits. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the thorn-sterling difference." Victor, sitting in the front row, felt a deep surge of pride. He wasn't just supporting her. He was witnessing her full, powerful potential unleashed. Diana, now a bright 6-year-old, sat beside him, scribbling furiously in a notepad, occasionally looking up at her mother with wide, fascinated eyes. A full and peaceful life. Their family life was the envy of their social circle, precisely because they guarded its intimacy fiercely. Their evenings revolved around Diana, homework, bedtime stories read by Victor, and Eleanor preparing their favorite weekend meal. Victor's request for simple, home-cooked food was a refreshing change from the endless catering of her previous marriage. One evening, while Diana was asleep, Eleanor and Victor were in their library, reviewing TSIF's investment portfolio. "Solaris is up 50% this quarter," Victor noted, closing his laptop. "Your strategic design overhaul was the catalyst, Eleanor. You're brilliant." "It wasn't just the design, Victor," she said, leaning back. "It was the integrity. Solaris is led by a mother of 3 who refuses to sacrifice her values. I saw myself in her." Victor rose and walked over to her, pulling her gently into his arms. "I see myself in you every day. You know." He paused, his voice softening. "Diana asked me today if my name was always Daddy." Eleanor's heart melted. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that my name is Victor, but the name Daddy is the best gift her mother ever gave me." He looked at her, his green eyes filled with the unwavering love that had been her anchor. "I want to be your husband forever, Eleanor, and I want to be Diana's father in every way the law allows. I still think we should have another child, a sibling for Diana." Eleanor nestled her head against his chest. "I want that too, Victor, more than anything." The ease and certainty of their shared future contrasted so sharply with the instability of her past. They were not just a couple, they were a united front against any external obstacle. The fading shadow of Arthur, the only echo from the past, came through a discreet call to Victor a few months later from his financial advisor. "Mr. Sterling, I have some final details regarding Arthur Sterling. Since he waived visitation, he has been completely liquidating his assets. He sold his last property in London and is residing permanently on a small island off the coast of Sicily." Victor listened calmly. "And his financial status? Still a billionaire, technically, but his money is now inert. He has no business interests, no projects, no family. He spends his time alone. He is wealthy, Mr. Sterling, but deeply, truly irrelevant." Victor thanked the advisor and hung up. He did not tell Eleanor. The details of Arthur's self-imposed exile were no longer relevant to their reality. The shadow had faded completely. Later that evening, while putting Diana to bed, she pointed to a framed photograph on her bedside table. A picture of Eleanor and Victor laughing on their wedding day. "Mummy," Diana said sleepily, You and Daddy are the best team." Eleanor kissed her forehead. "We are, darling. We are." The ultimate legacy. Love and truth. The ultimate legacy of the bitter divorce was not the financial empire Victor and Eleanor built, but the foundation of truth they created for Diana. She would never know a world of pretense, betrayal, or manipulation. She would only know the warmth of a father who fought to adopt her and a mother who fought to protect her worth. Years from now, when Diana inevitably asked about her biological father, Eleanor knew exactly what she would say. The truth, delivered with the same calm certainty she displayed in the courtroom. "Your biological father was a man who chose money and pride over love. But I chose Victor, and Victor chose us. That choice, darling, is the greatest inheritance we could ever give you." Where is she? Final call to action. If you were inspired by the depth of Victor and Eleanor's love, please like and share this story. Subscribe to our channel for more tales where integrity and love always triumph over arrogance. Growing up in Greenwich, another 10 years slipped by. Diana Sterling Thorne was now a sharp, confident 16-year-old. She grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. They had purchased a large, tranquil estate outside New York to give Victor easier access to the U.S. operations of TSIF. Diana not only inherited Eleanor's keen intellect and Victor's strategic calm, but she was raised in an environment utterly devoid of pretense. She knew the entire story about the betrayal, the trial, and her mother's courageous choice. Victor, always the honest father, had told her the story of the biological donor and the father of the heart since she was very young. Diana understood implicitly that love and commitment transcended genetics. One Saturday morning, as Diana prepared for a public speaking competition, she walked into Eleanor's study. "Mom," Diana said, holding a portfolio. "I was reading TSIF's file on Solaris. The company was invested in. Because they focus on creating a balanced work environment for mothers. Did that have anything to do with your past?" Eleanor smiled, proud of her daughter's perceptiveness. "A great deal, my love. I wanted to ensure no other woman felt they had to choose between family and career because of one man's self-importance." "You and Dad are the best team," Diana declared. "I want to be a leader like you both, one who can change the world with things that actually matter." The new addition to the family. A year later, the Sterling Thorne family welcomed a new addition, a healthy baby boy named Ethan. The decision to have another child, made after many years, was the result of their solid love and stability. To Victor and Eleanor, Ethan was more than just a child. He was a symbol of their completeness and freedom from the shadows of the past. Ethan's arrival further solidified the unique bond between Diana and Victor. Diana, who had once been the center of her parents' commitment, now became a proud big sister and protector. Victor, who had fought to be Diana's father, now effortlessly embraced fatherhood again, with boundless love. The completeness of their family, with 2 children, a successful women-led business empire, and a love built on the foundation of truth, was the final testament that they had won the war. Not just for money, but for values. The ultimate legacy, inheriting integrity. At Diana's high school graduation ceremony, she was invited to speak, with Victor, Eleanor, and little Ethan sitting in the front row. Diana stood at the podium, exuding the confidence of someone who knows her worth. "Many people define success by numbers," Diana said, "by bank balances or the volume of awards. But I was taught that true legacy is not what you build, but how you build it, and how you treat the people who help you build it. My parents gave me the best gift, the truth. My mother taught me that patience and the courage to speak the truth are your greatest strength. And my father," Diana looked at Victor, a radiant smile on her face, "taught me that true love is a choice you make every single day, a choice that transcends blood, transcends mistakes. The legacy I want to inherit is not the money, It is their integrity. As she finished her speech, the auditorium erupted in applause. Victor and Eleanor stood, looking at each other, then at Diana, and the small, clapping Ethan. They hadn't just won a divorce. They had created a family that could change the world by living their principles. And final call to action. What field do you think Diana will pursue when she grows up? Share your prediction. Subscribe to follow the continued success story of the Sterling Thorne family. The Final Sunset, a legacy cast in love. Subscribe for more inspiring stories, and like this video as a final salute to Eleanor and Victor's triumph. A new dawn in Greenwich. Years later, the Sterling Thorne family lived a life of deep fulfillment at their Greenwich estate. Diana graduated with honors from a prestigious university, pursuing law and business ethics, determined to use her acumen to drive integrity in the corporate world. Ethan, a lively boy with Victor's warm, humorous temperament, was in high school, passionate about environmental engineering, inspired by his father's green tech ventures. Victor and Eleanor remained a power couple, but their focus had shifted. TSIF had grown into a major philanthropic fund, having transferred day-to-day leadership to a new executive team, including Henry Caldwell. They spent most of their time traveling, not seeking contracts, but visiting the charitable projects they funded across the globe. On a late afternoon, Victor and Eleanor sat on their porch, overlooking the peaceful garden. Diana and Ethan were grown, self-sufficient, and the house was filled with a quiet sense of peace. "Do you remember that trial, Victor?" Eleanor asked, her hand resting lightly on his. "The day you weren't her father?" Victor smiled, a genuine, warm smile. I remember the feeling when I saw you walk into that room with Diana in your arms. That was the moment I knew that regardless of what happened with the financial settlements, I had found everything I ever wanted. I didn't win his divorce, Ellie. I won you." "You won us," Eleanor corrected, her eyes shining. "You gave me something Arthur could never, security without ownership." Arthur Sterling's legacy had become a cautionary tale, a footnote on the perils of arrogance in finance. Conversely, the Sterling Thorne legacy was a blueprint that showed money couldn't buy love, respect, or a father's rightful place. As the setting sun cast a warm golden glow over the garden, Victor squeezed Eleanor's hand. They hadn't just built an empire. They had built a family that ultimately redefined the true meaning of wealth. It is the wealth of love, integrity, and the choices made every day to champion truth and kindness. And that was a legacy Diana and Ethan would carry forward, changing the world in their own principled ways.